Whenever we talk about big shifts in a company, the word we always use is managing change. But what if that's the wrong word entirely? What if we're thinking about it all wrong? Today, let's dig into a much more powerful idea, not just managing change, but actually architecting it right from the very start.
Okay, let's start with a scene that I'm sure is way too familiar for many of you. You've got a project. The strategy is perfect. The tech solution is flawless. The plan is executed down to the minute. And yet, at the end of it all, it completely fails to deliver any real value. How does that happen? What is the missing piece of the puzzle? Well, the answer, almost every single time, comes down to the people. You can think of it as the last mile problem. All the brilliant technical work, all that careful planning, it all leads to one final step, getting people to actually use the new thing. And that is the exact moment where all that potential value is either created or it's just completely destroyed. So, to really get why this happens over and over again, we need to look at this fundamental flaw in how we've always done things. We treat the project part and the people part as two separate activities running side by side, and that's where everything goes off the rails. And this right here just lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the transformation plan, the tangible stuff like deploying a new IT system or redesigning a process. And then, over on the other side, on a totally separate track, you have the change plan. The awareness campaigns, the town hall meetings, these vague attempts to get buy-in. The two worlds barely even talk to each other. And that disconnect, that's not a small problem. It is the reason these projects fail. Because the change activities aren't actually tied to the work people are doing, it all feels, irrelevant. So what happens? You get poor adoption, you get active resistance, and before you know it, everyone just snaps right back to the old, comfortable way of doing things. And all that time and money, just wasted. So, okay, if that old model is so fundamentally broken, what's the fix? Well, it takes a complete shift in our thinking. We have to stop seeing the people side of things as some kind of side effect we have to manage and start seeing it as a core part of the project that we need to architect from day one. And that brings us to this core idea, change architecture. Now, the key words here are embedding and directly into the fabric. This is not a separate work stream. It's not a soft skills add-on you sprinkle on at the end. It is a core, fully integrated layer of the entire transformation plan. Here's how that works in the real world. A technical deliverable, let's say a new IT system, isn't done when you flip the switch. No way. It's only truly done when the people who need to use it are actually using it successfully. And that means things like role-specific training aren't just a nice-to-have. They become a required dependency. The project literally can't be marked as complete without them. Okay, so that's the big idea. But how does this actually work in practice? What are the key pieces that make change architecture so effective? Let's break it down. It really comes down to three main pillars. First, you move from those generic campaigns to really targeted interventions. Second, you completely change how you measure what success even looks like. And third, you start using your leadership in a much more systematic and powerful way. Now let's really focus on measurement for a second, because this is a huge shift. The old way was all about measuring sentiment. We'd send out surveys asking things like, "Are you happy about this upcoming change?" The new way, it measures proficiency. It measures adoption. We stop asking how people feel, and we start measuring if they are capable. Are you using the new system effectively? The difference between those two questions is absolutely everything. And once you make that shift, you start to see this entire discipline in a new light. This isn't just about communications and training anymore. At its heart, change architecture is a critical, hardcore form of risk management. Just think about this quote for a second. The biggest threat to your multi-million-dollar project isn't a technical bug. It's not a budget issue. The single greatest risk is that after all of that incredible work, people just ignore it, reject it, or don't use it properly. That is adoption risk, and it's the one that can sink the entire ship. So here's the bottom line. If adoption is your biggest risk, you have to manage it with the same seriousness as everything else. These readiness and adoption metrics can't be hidden away in an appendix somewhere. They have to be part of the main project governance, reviewed right alongside the technical red, amber, and green status reports in every single steering committee meeting, period. All right, let's pull all this together into a final blueprint. What are the key things you really need to remember to move from just managing change to truly architecting it for success? First, and never forget this, a technical solution has zero value until people adopt it. Second, stop running those parallel change plans. Integrate your human readiness activities directly with your technical ones. Third, treat poor adoption as the critical strategic threat that it is. And finally, when you model and track these activities, you give your leaders an amazing real-time view into whether the organization is actually ready to make the leap. So I'll leave you with one final critical question. The next time you look at a major project in your organization, ask yourself, is the human element being treated as an afterthought that just needs to be managed? Or is it being treated as a core component that needs to be architected? Because honestly, the answer to that question will probably tell you whether it's going to succeed or fail.